Welcome back in, everybody, to Pro Football Plus. I am Ben Parker. It's Austin Freed again. It's Shane Ratliff again. And it is you again. So thank you all for hopping in during this summer activity show. We're working through the wide receivers, chugging our way through NFL prospects for 2026. They may not all be in the 26th draft, but that's what we've heavy got our eye on. That plus the fact that we just absolutely love college football. So even if you don't care about the draft, if you just like college football, we are doing that here. Okay. So heavy on college football, even heavier on the 26th NFL draft, kind of working our way through that. The experts are here, of course, to help me out with all of it. And they're going to tell you what else they're doing besides this summer. Austin?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for this group. It's a lot of fun guys, and we're only getting to six of like 15 I want to talk about, but I'm excited for this and excited for pretty much everything going on right now. It's a good time.
Shane?
Yeah, I'm excited actually more to hear Austin's rundown on this. I tried to take a little bit of what I've seen for his evaluations and kind of broke these guys down the way that he did. So I'll be interested to see how I match up on that. And then, like Austin said, there's some interesting guys in this group. This is a different wide receiver group from the last couple of years. So
Absolutely. All right. We'll try to make this a shorter show than we did the quarterback show. I think the quarterbacks usually need more conversation than the wide receivers, but we will do them due justice. First, there's just a few provisos and a couple of quid pro quos to quote the famous Aladdin. First, any typos in the stats, man? I throw a lot of stats on here. There's probably gonna be one somewhere, so apologies as always. Second, this is not our permanent idea of these guys. Okay, we're well aware that this changes. Injuries happen. Guys get better. Guys get worse. Guys don't enter the draft. So this is not our permanent opinion. We are just beginning the process of looking at these guys. Number three, Austin, I apologize ahead of time. You might want to close your eyes and hold your ears. But for Father's Day, my beautiful family got me a coffee cup of the Detroit Lions. And I told them a coffee cup like this with any NFL team, and so that's what they picked out. And also, I apologize, but thank you for my beautiful family for the Father's Day thing. The last thing is, I really like this group of wide receivers, the six that we're talking about tonight. We're going to talk about our rankings here in a second, not rankings, but our thoughts. I really do like this group. We're ready to jump into it. Me and Austin and Shane did not compare notes. Again, you're getting three different opinions. I honestly have no clue what these guys are going to say about these six receivers. And they don't know what I'm going to say. But you're getting three different opinions for one show here tonight. So, guys, let's jump right into it. See if the tech will work tonight here. And I apologize. There it is. It didn't work like I wanted it to. So, give me 1 second here. Get off of this. I'm going to figure this out in a second here. But while we're doing that, we're going to start with Nic Anderson. Okay. So, Austin, Nic Anderson from LSU. I'll talk about the statistics here in just a second. He was at Oklahoma last year. He moved over to LSU. So, start us here talking about Nic Anderson, and then we'll get Shane doing it.
Yeah, so he is a big, lean, deep threat to me, sort of the MVS mold of receiver. Yeah, as you can see listed on that graphic, there's 6'4", 209. And I don't think MVS is a bad comp. I don't think he quite has that same level of speed, but a long strider, someone who has sort of narrow shoulders, getting off the line of scrimmage well and gets downfield well and tracks the ball really well. And then it gets to the hands, and you just kind of have to hope. The hands are not great, but that's something that I talk about all the time that can develop if the not everybody's going to develop good hands, but there are a lot of players who are able to develop good hands. So I'm hoping we can see a little bit of a step this year from Nic Anderson in that department. I don't think his yak ability is that good. He does get a lot of yards, but I think he had a lot of yards to get on his receptions due to like scheme and just being open out in space. I think when he is in an opportunity where he has to kind of create yak, I don't think he does that very well. He's very explosive. just like off the line and at the point of catch. He's competitive and explosive, which I like. And I put a question mark for strength. He's is big, but I don't think he plays to that size in terms of just like physicality. I think he uses that size in a limited role rather than some of these guys who we're going to talk about who really play up to their size and even beyond their size.
Shane, before I get to you, I'll go ahead and rattle off the statistics here. Austin alluded to them. 6'4", 209 is basically what we're seeing on the sites. You see the asterisk here. For this is for 2023 stats. His 24 stats were basically nil because of an extremely early season injury. So this is the 23 stats here, which is really the only thing worth showing. 38 catches that year, 798 yards. The eye-popping 21.1 yards per catch that Austin alluded to, and then the 10 touchdowns. Shane, give us the lowdown here on Nic Anderson.
So you're going to hear a lot that's a repeat of what Austin said. I think he went right at it. The big note I wrote down for Anderson is plays against his body prototype. You see a guy that's 6'4" and 209, and you think he's going to body people, and he shows none of that. Another guy we're going to talk about later, like Antonio Williams, that's a 5'11" guy that you think he's 6'6" when he's going for the ball. Like plays and physically, and Austin talked about the yard after the catch. I see almost nothing out of Anderson on that. His offense was designed for him for the deep and intermediate throws, and those are the catches he makes. Route tree, from what I've seen a lot, again, he missed basically an entire year last year. Route tree for him is not real strong. Again, that's hard to tell. Is that Oklahoma only setting certain things up, and they had some quarterback issues, back and forth on that. But the big thing that Austin hit on, like I said, he plays against his body prototype, and he's one of those guys that you'd like to see catch 200 balls a day on a jugs machine because his hands are a deficit against his athletic ability. He's a wide receiver that you're more fearful when he does get open because when he's wide open, it's a 50-50 chance that he's not going to grab the ball. It seems like when he has somebody that's a little bit tighter in coverage, he does tend to remember what he needs to do, so he grabs it a little bit better. But I think out of the ones we went with the injury and what he's shown, I think he's one of the weaker of our six-pack. And it'll be interesting to see what he does at LSU now with a true quarterback.
All right. I didn't put down a lot of notes on purpose for tonight because we want to move through these guys quick, and I want to give you guys as much chance to talk. I don't have anything different. Matter of fact, y'all even threw in a couple of things there that I hadn't even thought about. What I did write was just quickly, so fast, very explosive, and very confident, unbelievably confident in himself and his abilities, which, to be honest, is probably a little bit unmerited considering he doesn't seem to be applying himself all that much off the field, quite honestly. Y'all mentioned the hands being an issue. Y'all mentioned the routes being an issue. Y'all mentioned the physicality being an issue, which is all true. All right. So the only thing I can credit is maybe, youth and experience, that combination, maturation. Maybe this year we start to see that kick in. He really does put in the offseason work and starts to grow into this a little bit. But, he's very dangerous deep. Goodness gracious. He can run you deep. You see that there with the yards per catch and the touchdowns, but there's a lot missing here. So, totally agree on Nic Anderson. If anybody's wondering why we did this order, there is no real rhyme or reason to tonight's order, okay? It's a six-pack. We just wanted to cover these guys for tonight. But Nic Anderson, very explosive. I do expect him to have a big year at LSU, but how much of that is going to translate into NFL teams wanting him high up in the draft is the real question here, and that, I think, is where we're all at. Austin, final word on Nic Anderson. We're going to roll into the next guy.
Yeah, overall, I think this is a guy who I'm keeping my eyes on a lot. He's going to be tied to a really solid quarterback this year and have a chance to be a focal point of a pretty solid offense. I'm looking for him to, kind of as Shane said, expand his route tree, develop his hands, kind of I mentioned, and potentially move up to one of those, late first round talents even. I think he has that sort of ability. It just depends on if we see the development.
All right, that's Nic Anderson. Up next, Carnell Tate. I've actually got two slides for him tonight. 6'3", so the size is there again, 192 on the poundage in 2024. Had 52 catches, 733 yards. The more normal-ish YPR of 14.1 for receivers in this category. and then the 4 touchdowns. Honestly, because there's so many other people that were grabbing touchdowns last year for Ohio State, is a big reason why he only got 4. I'm introducing one concept here tonight. I guess you can call it a heat chart. You can attach any name you want to it. The idea of this is not what all can they do. It's during the past year, what did I see them do the most? Okay, that's really the concept behind this. They may be fully capable of doing infinitely more things or different things than what the current program is asking them to do. But this is what I saw the most out of Carnell Tate. Lots of just over the middle, lots of more square route stuff is what I'm getting to here with Carnell Tate. Very fast. You see the drag route here. He's efficient at that. You see the crossing route. He's got the post route. He's got the straight seam. And then he's got this kind of out route that he works off of this right here. So that's what I saw him do. The idea there being lots of West Coast style patterns. You talk about the 49ers back in the 80s and just being able to repetitively do the same thing again and again because he's got that speed to do it and not necessarily doing a lot of different things. I'm not saying he's not capable of that, but that's what Ohio State had him doing a lot of last year. That's Carnell Tate on my side. Shane, I'm going to give you first word and eventually last word on Carnell, so take it away.
Well, I think the important thing, you mentioned it with what they do and what he's asked to do, Ben, is that Ohio State, like it or not, has become a wide receiver factory. Brian Hartline has done an excellent job in coaching, and it seems like every year you have 3 draft choices that are Ohio State wide receivers. You got to pick which one you want. Carnell Tate falls within that because, again, he's not the most dynamic one on Ohio State. We'll talk about that guy on another episode. I think everyone knows what's coming on that end if you watch any college football. But Carnell Tate plays the great Robin in this case. The route tree that you've discussed already, Ben, those are the routes that he hits, especially the in cut. Uses his size well. I think Ohio State has him programmed as a number 2, and I think that's kind of going to be where he sits. I think some of the things that we talked about as being difficult for Anderson, I think Tate takes those worries away. Good hands, will get in your face on the run game because he doesn't really have a choice at Ohio State. You're going to do that or you're not going to play. For me, the thing is, I'd like to see now that he's going to be the true number 2, do we see those touchdown numbers and yardage numbers explode this year? Going to play underneath a new quarterback again out of Ohio State, coming off a national championship. It'll be interesting to see how that with a new offensive coordinator shows up. So it's good to be part of that factory system at Ohio State. You know what you're going to be asked to do, but you need to be the next generation. So we'll see what he does with the opportunity.
Austin.
He's an interesting player. I don't think he's exceptionally fast, but he plays with great speed throughout his entire route tree, and he has great tempo. I think, is at his best when he is able to build up and ramp up his speed and then work against zone coverage where he can either uh, feel the open space and hammer it, or he can feel the open space and sit in it. He's not a great start stopper, which I think makes him a little bit uh, less effective against man coverage. But he's a fantastic deep ball runner. Very nuanced, does a great job of maintaining speed while deceiving the defensive backs and the safeties with great head fakes and choppy feet at certain points. But he does that while maintaining his speed downfield. And he has enough speed to where if he gets a DB flat-footed for even second, he can pass them up, at least in the college level. When he gets to the NFL level at some point, we'll see if that can maintain because it is a different level of athlete there. But I did want to mention he has some of the best hands in this class. I think his hands are fantastic. He's a plucker of the ball, meaning he goes and gets it out front and then pulls it into his body beautifully, and he keeps it away from danger doing that. You see a lot of guys go out and catch the ball with their hands and then allow DBs to get their hands on the ball and knock it out. he catches the ball, he plucks it, and either pulls it into him or keeps it away from DBs, whatever side they're on. He'll manage to keep the ball away, and I think he does that beautifully, which is a sort of um, instinctual thing. I feel like when I see guys do that, it just sort of tells me they have good instincts for playing receiver. Overall, I have a really high grade on this guy, or I'm anticipating having a really high grade on this guy once I, fully evaluate him after this year. Unfortunately, I didn't have any all 22 tape of him, or I had limited all 22 tape of him. So some of the more nitty gritty stuff, I don't have the sort of great stuff to look at, so I didn't evaluate that kind of stuff. But from everything I saw, I think this guy's going to be a really good receiver, play a great number two, as you mentioned, for the Ohio State team.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Shane already mentioned it. That he's not the best receiver on the team, even, but really love this guy. I'm already wanting to grab him in the first round if I see the same kind of stuff next year in 25 that I saw in 24, and hopefully a little bit of growth along with it. Austin, it's a great note on the hands thing there because I wasn't even going to bring that up. Some of my notes. I do love the speed. It's not elite speed, as one of you already mentioned, but the speed is there, right? Very, very good working speed that he seems to be under control with. I like the separation, but it's again, it's not separation versus man because I noticed that a lot. Seems to love zones and crave space. I mean, goodness gracious. One of you already mentioned he's a zone killer. I mean, wow, can he destroy zones? So I really like that. Tons of work over the middle and underneath. It's not that he can't hit the flies and the seams because he's got that speed if you give it to him, like you already mentioned. But again, most of the work is here over the middle and underneath was just where they just kept feeding him, and that again, those things right there is where I got the West Coast imagery again of harkening all the way back to the 80s and the Bill Walsh and the 49ers stuff, just repetitively, especially against a lot of these modern zones. So that's what I'm seeing there as well on Carnell Tate. Shane, last word here on Tate.
So to piggyback off of what Austin said, the word that I kept on coming back to when watching Tate was smooth. As Austin mentioned, I don't think he's the burner out of this group by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he does everything at a pace that makes it difficult. It's the same as, and I know Austin and I like doing baseball tie-ins here, but it's a pitcher that can lay the pitches in the same way. But you can't tell what Tate's going to do off of his break and off of the speed that he uses, which makes him an absolute killer on the zone side because you don't have a read. Is he going to bust up? Is he going to fall back down? He doesn't waste steps. Again, like I said, being trained really well at Ohio State, and it helps when you have great teammates that can demand the ball. It lets you work on your game and do a little bit on the backside, which is where he made a killing last year, even like you said, only 4 catches, but his routes on the backside, when the quarterback comes back too, he's going to be open because as a DB, you're not going to be able to stick with him long enough.
All right, very good work there on Carnell Tate. We don't always see players the same way, and that's fine. Sometimes players have 2 different sides to them, and we're seeing the 2 different sides, but I feel like we're all seeing Carnell Tate there almost exactly the same way. Next up, Jordyn Tyson, Arizona State, a very different receiver. I've got another graph on him as well to illustrate that. Height, either 6'1", 6'2", and again, we know everybody's height weights are always different until they get to the combine, and then they change after that, right? We get it, but there seemed to be a complete split on whether this guy's 6'1" or 6'2", but he is what he is, and Tate is still the Tate. Weight 195, 75 catches last year, turned that in for well over 1,000 receiving yards at 1,101. The yards per catch there at 14.7 and 10 touchdowns. A very productive guy. This was the only other guy I did a heat chart for tonight. I just didn't have time to get everybody else's. But this is Jordyn Tyson's heat chart. Okay, this is very different from Carnell Tate's route tree or heat chart, whatever you want to call it. Okay, they do everything with this guy. All right, I mean they. If this were the corner of the end zone, he's got this little thing where he can curl up behind the defender this way or behind the defender that way. When he's at the line of scrimmage, sometimes they'll just step over here and catch it, and they'll hand it to him. Sometimes they'll run him on a jet sweep over this way. Sometimes they'll just do this little curl in and break underneath. Sometimes he'll do the push and up and through. Sometimes he's got the post, the fly. I mean, sometimes he'll go up and then back out again. I mean, they do all kinds of crap with this guy. And from the chart, it looks like he's a sloppy route runner more so than, say, the Carnell Tate, which is not necessarily the case. What this is right here, because I drew it this way on purpose, he is very nuanced. He loves working in tight spaces. He loves working around things, through things. So you're going to see a little bit less of this straight line orientation and a lot more of this kind of looping around like he's on a ice skating, ice rink kind of an idea, right? That's the imagery that you get when you watch Jordyn Tyson. That's not necessarily a description of his route running. That's just the imagery that you see when you watch this guy. So Jordyn Tyson, I'm sorry. Jordyn Tyson operates very differently from Carnell Tate. I think, Austin, we're back to you for the first word on this guy. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, the word I've written down the most when evaluating Tyson is just violent. He does everything violently, whether it's running after the catch, whether it's actually catching the ball or just getting off the line of scrimmage. It's just everything he does looks like it has violence, yet it's almost graceful in a way too. He Without even looking, I just knew he was a basketball player with a guy with a basketball background. You could see it in the lateral agility that he has. He has very good lateral agility, and I think that's what lets him play with this sort of combination of violence and grace that really plays well for him. Because I think he lacks a little bit of athletic ability in terms of start, stop, and top end speed. I don't think he accelerates well, and I don't think he necessarily reaches a high top end speed either. But he's so good laterally, and he plays with such a violence that I think it really uh, puts a really nice cover and band-aid over that lack of speed and acceleration. I think he has some of the most fluid hips that you'll see in the draft. It reminds me of almost like Keenan Allen's ability to just like flip the hips on a dime. I really like seeing that out of a receiver. And the other thing is, I think his hands are good. I don't think they're at the Carnell Tate level or maybe another player or two that'll be mentioned later, but I think he has good enough hands when he decides to use them that I think I'm pretty comfortable saying this guy is going to be a reliable target once he's able to sort of develop and get open at a regular basis, which he already does pretty well.
All right, Shane.
So really to hit off Austin, violent is the word. Um, I think the other skill that he has that I was surprised and actually came up through our breakdown of Sam Levitt is his tracking skills. I agree with Austin. I don't think his hands are the best in the group, but he does a great job of tracking the ball. He makes some catches that really, some other wide receivers might not, and it's because he gets a great read. I think it's the basketball skills, like Austin said. He reads like a rebounder. He's going to frame his body up to make sure that he has the best position to get the ball. Had a great year last year. The other thing that popped out, and I followed this again with the Sam Levitt looking over Arizona State's, he had 298 snaps as a run blocker. If you want to have a fun trip watching wide receivers on this, there are some times where Cam Scatterbout, maybe he ran over 3 other people, but I'll tell you what, Jordyn Tyson has his guy on the ground too. He's ready to get in there and mix it up. He likes that physicality. I also thought that he shows great separation. And I think, like Austin said, it's not speed. It's because he presents physically. And so DBs try to play him differently. The separation makes it look like he's running by guys when he's really not. They just don't want to get jammed up with him because they know they're going to lose that battle. And then so he makes a move on that. I think he'd be hard pressed to have as many yards as he did last year again this year. But a guy that's fun to watch, like Austin said.
At the end of the show, and this is really just because the audience loves it and I love it, I'm going to ask you guys how many of these 6 that y'all are seriously considering somewhere in the first round at this point. Again, we're way off timeline-wise, but just to give us a framework, and I'll tell you a pet peeve of mine about that later. But let me run off my notes, and I'll give Austin the final word on Tyson here. reliable, productive, technical, good routes, good hands. Not very tall, but not short either. So, representative height. Good speed, but not elite. I think Austin already mentioned that. Seems to love working horizontally and in tight areas. I already mentioned that, and we've already mentioned the horizontal. Can change direction easily. Seems like the guy who has worked the most on his game out of these six receivers. It really feels like he's put in a lot of work off the field to try to do some of these things. So some of that's natural, but some of it seems like he's worked on it. Good in traffic, athletic, and loves to work the corner of the end zone. If you haven't seen him work the back right-hand corner of the end zone repeatedly and just mix up defenders, it's like he knows how to get behind them, and they don't know where he goes, and he knows that they don't know where he goes. I mean, goodness gracious, it's a devastating move back there in the corner of the end zone. Very, very effective. So, Austin, take the last word on Tyson here, man.
I think one other thing I wrote down that I really enjoy of him, a skill that he has, or something that he tends to do, maybe is attack the football, which is one of my favorite things from a receiver when, they're open, they could wait for ball to get to them, but they go and get the football. It is very helpful to a quarterback. It allows them to catch the ball on their terms and not necessarily get hit, while they're trying to finish the catch. And I think that's one of the things that he does at an elite level that does show, Ben, as you mentioned, maybe a level of refinement that some of these other guys don't have. That is something I think some guys have instincts for, and other guys do have to sort of work to get. And I think if you to tell me which of these guys not necessarily is the most talented, but is the most refined and technical, I'd have a hard time arguing Tyson.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's why because when I first glance at this little heat chart I've got here, it looks sloppy, but it's not. This is him doing stuff on purpose, using what he's got and what he's practiced, and it's actually very technical, I think, in that way. All right, that's Jordyn Tyson, Arizona State. Shane might be having technical problems. If he is, we'll catch back up with him when he hops back on. Malachi Fields, there's Shane. Malachi Fields from Notre Dame, transferred from Virginia. Height 6'4", weight 220, and I don't think that begins to describe what this bear looks like when he's out there on the football field. Okay, 55 catches last year, 808 receiving yards per catch at 14.7. We've seen several of these guys in the 14 range as usual, and 5 touchdowns. I'm curious to see what y'all have to say on one attribute of his game, but I'll save my notes and thoughts until it's my turn. Shane, your team, I assume you're excited to have this guy on board. Tell us about him.
So I think a couple of things show up. First of all, former high school quarterback, and I think you see that in his play. Good understanding of what he needs to do, understanding when he gets the ball, what else is going to happen. I put down steady 50 receptions and 800 yards for a Virginia team that has been terrible the last couple of years. I think that for him, in the tape that I saw, he might be the best 50-50 ball guy out of the group that we're talking about today. I think Antonio Williams is another one we'll talk about later that's up in that category as well. But I think he's one of the number one guys out of this group that plays to the size that he actually is. He is not confused that he's 6'4" and 220. He's going to out physical you. He's going to try to make those moves. I'm really interested to see, as you said, on Notre Dame, what this becomes for him. I think Notre Dame coaches, they've, for the last couple of years, always play Virginia and put a pretty good beat on him. So they've seen he be the only offensive weapon they had to worry about. It'll be interesting to see when they are capable of putting him in there. I think his hands are okay. I don't think he's on the high end for the group that we're talking about. So that'd be something I would like for him to, continue working on, as I think a lot of this group, we see little things that can add to it. I think he's well-rounded, but he's one of the guys I think a change of scenery is going to help him, and he might have a huge year this year.
Austin?
Yeah, I put imposing when I talked about the size. It's a large man, and he lets you know. And he's not very affected by. You see a lot of these big guys who are able to bully smaller guys, and then when they get a guy who has size lined up against them, all their size seems to disappear and vanish. He's not one of those. I think he is held back a little bit by his size. I put lumbering. He looks like he's carrying a lot of weight and size with him. I think he has the same problem that Tyson does if he's not very good stop start and he doesn't have the long speed. Generally, you like to have one of those things. Tyson's saved by his lateral agility. Fields is not. He doesn't really have any of the three movement skills. You want to see either, stop start vertically, agility left and right, or just deep speed, like it's ramp up speed and he can get there. And he just doesn't seem to have any of the three, which is pretty disappointing. But he does manage to get open because he is a pretty refined route runner and technical in his breaks. And even when he's not open, he's open because he is really big and I think he has fantastic hands. Not the best of this class, but better than Tyson. I think he catches
Mhm.
the ball away from his body really well. Plus, he's so large with long arms that it really prevents a lot of DBs from getting their hands on the ball. I don't think he's as, I use the word plucky, I think, with when I talked about Carnell Tate. And I'll also mention that when I get to Williams, but he doesn't quite have that pluckiness to it, but he goes and gets the ball at least, which I do like. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, and this is things that is not prototypical for a guy of his size, is he's a really good yak threat, I think, and he has fantastic body control. Usually, guys of his size are not quite as naturally gifted in those aspects of the game, but he is.
All right. Love everything y'all put out there. I totally agree with everything y'all put out there. And y'all even did manage to answer the attribute question that I had as well. I'll even come back to that in a second. My brief notes on Malachi Fields, because I watched a bunch of tape, but I just didn't put that many notes. Big and physical, like you've already said. And I can't overstress how big and physical he is. Go check out the tape. He's big and he's physical, and he uses it and he knows it and he understands who he is, and he's very good at this. Okay. Virginia loved his physicality so much because he's surprised. I don't want to put on the idea that he's super fast or super athletic because he's not. But for his size, he is athletic to a surprising degree and surprisingly fast for his size. So a lot of times Virginia just fell in love with the idea of just literally throwing the ball out to him out there on the flat at the line of scrimmage, and he would catch it, make a move, run over a guy, and then pick up about 8 yards. And y'all mentioned the run after the catch there, the yards after the catch. He had that at college level. Now, I don't know that he's going to do all of that at the NFL level, but still, the idea is there. This is a big physical guy who is imposing and can really assert his physicalness on opposing defenders for sure every time at the NFL level, I think, to a degree as well. The question I had, is he fast enough to work downfield, or is he limited by quarterback play? There probably were some quarterback limitations there at Virginia, but again, it's not that he can't catch the ball down the field. I just didn't see consistently that speed being their deep threat. And again, I think that's going to pull him back a little bit in the draft, in spite of how big he is and how dominant he is. All business all the time. This guy is serious. You don't see none of this fool around, cut up, argue, jawing with opponents, dancing, celebrating, rizz yah stuff. None of it. He makes a play. He tosses the ball back to the ref, and he's lined up again for the next play. He is all business, all serious, all the time. It's a great fit for Notre Dame. It's a great fit for pro team. All right. So when it comes to that, I absolutely love that. Shane, I think you've got the final word on this guy.
So the player comp that I came up with, and I think he would play it. You mentioned the flat passes at Virginia, Ben. When I watched Malachi Fields play, I thought Isaiah Likely at Coastal Carolina, 6'4", in college likely was like 220. Now he's probably closer to 250, but same frame, good hands. Like Austin said, I don't think he snatches the ball quite as well as I would like, but I think it's because of what they ask him to do. Yards after a catch, again, I think that he has an opportunity in a Notre Dame offense that's going to be a little bit more diverse this year. I think he has an opportunity to really show up. So I think Austin hit on it. He does the things that he does well. But I think just like Austin mentioned with Jordyn Tyson, he doesn't have the breakaway skills in any one particular frame that we've talked about with some of these other guys. I think he, however, like you mentioned, Ben, with not goofing around, I think he probably maxes out his potential more than any of these other guys right now. What you've seen on tape is what he's going to give you, and you don't ever have to question that. Like I said, consistent 50 catches, 800 yards. You give him a better quarterback and another thing, I think all those go up, but you're guaranteed to get that out of him. Durable as well. So I think he'll have a good year this year.
I love Malachi Fields, and I don't want to overstate that because then people think, well, top 10 draft pick. That's not what I think. But I really do love Malachi Fields. Okay, so that's him. We expect a big year at Notre Dame from him. Another big and imposing physical guy here, Denzel Boston out of Washington, 6'4", son of a former pro himself, weight 209, 63 catches last year, 834 yards, 13.3 yards per catch, and 9 touchdowns. Austin, you were back to first word.
Yeah, this is another physical guy, very physically gifted, and also has that top end speed that I think Fields lacks. Not necessarily a great accelerator, but when he gets up and running, he really can I think stride out long, and he tracks the deep ball well. He's really not that good of a deep ball threat, despite those groups of talents, and I can't figure out why. I think maybe something just needs to click for him. Some guys just don't necessarily do great on deep balls for one reason or the other. But he sort of has the talent, I think, to become an elite deep ball receiver versus right now he's just a solid one. I think he has okay hands. I think he has okay agility. There's really not much else that really jumps off the page besides things I've mentioned already. I think unlike Fields, how I mentioned where Fields is a big guy who lets everybody know he's big, I think Denzel Boston, when he gets a guy of size lined up against him, his size sort of vanishes, which I is just a really common trait. I don't want to make it sound like he's one of the rare guys who doesn't do that. I feel like it's almost more rare for the Fields guys who don't necessarily ever let their size go to waste and always use it. But Boston's more of one of the more usual guys who their size can disappear, unfortunately, at times. I had no all 22 tape of him, and it seemed like he had a lack of nuance in his routes, but again, looking from that TV angle, you miss a lot of nuance in routes. But I did feel like he had a pretty good feel for zone, especially in the red zone. He seemed like a really solid red zone threat. And I think that's pretty much all I got on him.
Very good. Austin, I will come back with a question and give you the final word on him. Shane?
Austin hit on the last thing. I have red zone weapons circled about 3 times. That's where he really shows his skills. Austin hit on the deep ball. Like Austin, I didn't get a lot of all 22 tape, but it's difficult at best when you're watching because the TV camera wants you to see what they want you to see.
Mhm.
But I think concentration might be a weakness. When Austin talked about deep ball, I think that's when he loses the tracking. I think the drops that he has too, a lot of it, I don't see it as hand issue because I see him make some incredible catches, and then I see him drop ones that I think it's more of a focus. I don't know if it's some people, especially if you're a longer strider, as you get deeper, it's harder for you to not move your head and adjust. Some of those guys have great skill at it that they get, like a Randy Moss. His head never moved. You could have put a chocolate milk cup on top of his head. He could have caught that ball and still kept running, not spilled the drop. That type of skill is not usual. I think the thing that showed up the most, is especially I watched the all 22 that I did get to see was them playing against Washington State in the Apple Cup. I don't know if it's a factor of not wanting to be your dad, but when I think of David Boston, I always thought absolutely giant biceps and wanted to out physical everyone that got in my way. And I thought that Denzel Boston is 6'4", 209, you're not real heavy, but as Austin said, if a DB got in his face and let it be known that he wasn't going to let him walk over him, Boston completely changed the way he played in the games that I saw. So if you're going to press him, that's the way to beat them right now. You're going to press him. You're going to out physical him at the line of scrimmage. And as Austin has hit on, he can do a lot of things, but he doesn't have outstanding speed. I think agility is a true weakness on his side. Like, I think he competes, but it's not. He doesn't have any shift to him. I'm not worried about him beating me off the line. I know where he's going to be. I can see the route tree he's going to run. That's where I think the red zone helps him, because there's only so many defenses you can play, and the defender, the sideline helps him in this way, because they can't really put extra people out there, because he'll just box them out and get to the ball. I think this is a guy that could have a big turnaround. I think a lot of the weaknesses he has, I don't think agility is going to grow up, but I think he can concentrate more. I think the hands are viable. So hopefully with another year in the belt, he can add to the numbers that he's already shown.
That's very good work from y'all. I'm coming out just a slightly different on him, but I'll give Austin the final word here. First of all, big, physical, polished. I did like his hands, although I didn't think it was best in group. So again, big, physical. I thought he seemed to understand how to use that physicality very well. It's almost like he knew who he was. But I didn't notice, because I hadn't done as much tape on him, what y'all are talking about is that against certain defenders, it seems to go away and dissipate. I did notice that Malachi Fields, I just liked his physicality even better. Fields seemed to just be more imposing all the time. So I did notice that. But that's great work from y'all that y'all are saying, hey, certain times, certain games, people can get in his face and start to limit that. And maybe that's attitude or mindset where he just needs to step it up and get in gear a little bit. So that's good. I like his speed way better than Fields, but I didn't think it's even touching in any way the speed of some of these other guys we're talking about tonight. So I just don't think he's got that top gear, and I think that may be a limiting factor. But I do like him. I really like this guy. I just want to see another step this year is what I would really like to see, especially considering who his dad is and how much production he did have at Washington last year. I would love to see him take a next step to where, because I do like him, but it's not like, man, next year's draft, I really hope I get this guy. It's like, well, somewhere in the draft, I'll be fine drafting him. I'd love to see him take that next step to where he just really makes me want him as a wide receiver. Austin, you get final word on Denzel here.
Yeah, I think this is a really solid receiver. I like his sort of package that he brings. It's not complete, but I think it has enough pieces that are viable and he can be an asset to a team. I think one of his most underrated ability, I think, is his yards after catch. He turns into a really good runner. He's not necessarily the most shifty or tackle breaking, but he just seems to have a nose to go the right direction. Like once he gets the balls in his hands, he seems to just pick the right lane and hit it really hard and fast and well, which I appreciate.
All right, excellent work. Here's our last guy of the night, and maybe some people's favorite. Here comes Antonio Williams out of Clemson. 5'11", somebody already mentioned that way earlier, might have even been before the show. Weight 190, 75 catches last year, 904 receiving yards per catch at 12.1, 11 touchdowns. I didn't do this for the other receivers because they either only had one or two carries or none. He actually had 7 carries for 101 rushing yards, one rushing touchdown for Clemson. They don't need him to do that a lot, but he does have at least that option that on jet sweeps and stuff, whereas some of the receivers really don't. So I threw that in there just as a bit of an option here. Shane, you get first word on Antonio.
So I think we've talked about big wide receivers this entire show, and this is a guy that forgot that he's 5'11". I think he plays game size bigger than a lot of these other guys. What he has in physicality, he uses. Austin talked about like pluckiness. This is a guy that goes up, gets the ball. If it's in his direction, he's going to fight for it. He snacks it. You can see punt returner, you can see running back, you can see the way once he gets the ball in his hands, he attacks it differently. The one thing that I was surprised with his physicality, he does not have an interest in run blocking. He doesn't get into it that way from what I've seen. again, I mean, if you're doing everything else for Clemson, I don't know what more they're going to ask him to do on that, but I did see him really stick his face in there. But for a guy that shows that type of physicality when the ball's in his hand, you normally have guys that will show that again on that. That was like the only weakness I saw. I think he has excellent hands. I think the route tree is great. He's one of the guys where I think does have the quick first step. He can open himself up. Uh, as I said before, 50-50 balls. He plays bigger than what he should. If you need to question if he's going to come down the ball, watch Clemson versus Pitt. Watch them versus SMU. I mean, when they needed him, he showed up. I think he has some great partners on Clemson's wide receiving staff is going to, if you're not following college football, they're going to surprise some people again this year. I know Austin was on them early last year, and they definitely showed up. And I think this year it's going to be impressive to say the least. But they're going to attack. Williams is probably out of this group, probably my favorite of the ones to watch. The tape for him shows that he thinks he's going to score regardless if it's a 1 yard out on the having to go 99, or if you're in the red zone and you need him to just break a slant. The guy wants to score. He wants the ball in his hands. I think he's going to be a true number one. And we talked about guys in the draft. This is a guy you're going to want to look for. He's gonna move up. He's going to give you options when it's finally his time to get drafted.
Very good, Austin.
He reminds me a lot of one of my favorite receivers that I've ever scouted, in Garrett Wilson. He has a lot of the same traits as Garrett Wilson. I don't think he's quite as fast.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's very scary. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's a great athlete with incredible ball control. I think he's stronger than Garrett Wilson, but Garrett Wilson always has that ability to just like randomly like play through contact, and you're like, this is a small guy. Antonio Williams, a little bit bigger, and plays with, I think, more strength, less speed, but has that incredible body control, plucks the ball really well, protects the ball really well when he becomes a runner. The only negative I wrote down for him, and I think this is the first time I've ever written this when evaluating an NFL player. I said he might be claustrophobic. Um, he hates being in tight space. Get this man in as big of an opening as you can find, and he's going to absolutely torch you. But he seems to not necessarily love being in those tight, confined spaces, short over the middle. Get him out in the hook curl where there's only one guy around him, or get him deeper down the field where it's more spread out, and he can really function at a high level. I think this is a guy who's going to surprise a lot of people. He's really not that high up on the consensus board right now. I think he's going to make his way up that board throughout the process of the year. And then the last thing I wrote is kind of the opposite of Fields, who we talked about, who didn't have any of the three movement skills: the deep speed, the lateral agility, or the straight acceleration. I think he has all three. Unfortunately, none of the three are an elite level, which is one more thing that's just slightly holding him back. I'm very, very much nitpicking when I'm talking about the negatives in his game.
Very good. Y'all's evaluations are perfect. So, from an evaluation standpoint, I'm not doing anything else here on him. I'll just talk about him overall. He's a guy who, when I watched this tape, I just fell in love. I mean, my gosh, I just loved every single thing I saw. I mean, y'all have mentioned it all, so I'm not going to regurgitate it because I just loved it. And I encourage you, y'all go watch the tape. It's a fun tape to watch. Now, when I went back and looked at the group as a whole, he was a guy who started falling for me because I had, other guys that were bigger and more physical, or I had a guy who I liked better as a deep threat, or I had a guy who I liked better as a horizontal threat. And so he was falling in that regard, but it wasn't anything that he does. I think I go back to maybe Austin's last statement there. He didn't seem to be elite at anything. He's very good in a ton of categories, and I love watching him play, and I would draft him in a heartbeat. But boy, if I'm certain teams and I need a certain attribute, I may bypass him in order to pick up another guy when it comes to NFL time, right? And that's not necessarily a knock on him because I would love to have him. But it's just like, well, do I need what he offers, or do I need this other attribute? And I may go for the other attribute depending on which team I am. So that's where I was with him. And again, even though he plays huge, when he goes up to the NFL level, will it really translate? Because he's still dadgum 5'11", and that's a problem. Dang it, he's not 6'3", he's not 6'2", and sometimes we see guys that it doesn't matter. They go right up the next level and they just continue to play exactly the same, and sometimes it does. So I love what I see here on tape, and I want to draft him, and I want to draft him somewhere high. But still, those are the things that do bother me from an NFL standpoint. But Shane, I think you get the final word on Antonio, correct? Give it to us, man.
I think what you guys kind of just hit on this last little bit when you're talking about drafting. I think the problem is the NFL is going to see a 5'11" guy that has not elite but good speed, great hands, and toughness, and they're going to say he's a slot guy. And like Austin said, it couldn't be farther from the truth. Williams is a guy that needs to play on the outside, and that's where you see his skill set. He's not a Deebo Samuel. He's not like he can run the ball, but he doesn't need the contact to be able to set him free. I think I didn't write that down, but claustrophobic is a great statement from Austin.
Yeah.
He is a guy that's built to play on the outside. And in the NFL today, if you're under 6'2", they're going to put you on the inside. It doesn't matter, like, your speed, what they think of you. They try to think, like, oh, that's like, we're under 6 feet. You're a slot guy. That's what slot guys do. You have 75 catches. Slot guys get 75 to 100 catches. That's exactly what you're built for. I think, as both of you mentioned, and I know last year Austin had already been on Antonio Williams when we started talking college football. I think he's a guy that's going to blow up this year. He has a set quarterback. He's got a partner in crime. Clemson is back fighting their way through. I think he's going to absolutely dominate in the ACC this year. I don't see a ton of DBs that are going to want to get in his way. And I think Clemson's going to let him play on the outside one-on-one and dare people to come play against him. And if they do that, it's not going to go well. I love the way he competes. Like Austin said, can you nitpick some things? Yeah, you can, but I think he does everything at a good level. And some of the things that he does competitive-wise, I think he does greater than anybody else that we've talked about. The only one I think that's even remotely close to him in that sense is Jordyn Tyson, and they're two different players, but they're both physical, and that's why I think Williams is going to have a huge year. Of all the ones we've talked about, I think he's the one that could have the explosion from what he's done in the years past.
That's Antonio Williams, everybody. That's excellent work. Austin, Shane, thank y'all very much. Final question of the night. Austin, I'll kick it to you first. I alluded to it earlier. Out of these 6 guys, and again, we're almost a year off from the draft, but out of these 6 guys, who at the moment are you considering has a chance to be in the first round? Is there anybody you've even eliminated being like, hey, I really don't think this is the first round guy, or has everybody got a chance here out of this group?
I don't think Anderson or Fields are first round guys. I think Boston and Tyson are not, I'm not expecting them to be, but they could. And Williams and Tate, I think, are guys who I am pretty much already counting in as going to be first round or maybe early second, but not gonna be surprised at all if either of them go in the first round.
Beautiful work, Shane.
I think I couldn't agree more with Austin. I think Tate is a 15 to 25 guy. I think Williams, if he had 2 more inches, he's a 15 to 25 guy. I think he's probably a beginning second round. I think he's a guy where people are like, oh, he might jump up. A team's going to make a move to get him early when they see him there. The one that's going to surprise me most is going to be Jordyn Tyson. I think he has the ability to really break out and get up there and get an opportunity. The thing that I worry about, and hopefully it's not, the Patriots that make this move, but 6'4" and you're at LSU, the NFL will give you a couple of chances. I don't think Anderson's numbers, I don't think the play style that he's shown at Oklahoma would warrant it, but he could be one of those guys that has an excellent combine and he blows up because, the other thing that we mentioned, when we're talking speed wise, the numbers that I saw for most of these guys, they're all sitting around like a 4.5. So if one of these guys rips off a low 4.4 number, I think they're going to jump too. But I agree with Austin's number. I think Tate is the one lock, and I think being at Ohio State is going to help you because they're going to be able to say every wide receiver we've drafted in the first 2 rounds is produced for the team that they've drafted them at. So
very good. I'll rattle off mine real quick. I do love this group of 6-pack. I really like this group. Malachi Fields, I've got him early second round, mainly because of the speed concern. Antonio Williams, I've got anywhere from late first, early second, again, depending on what we see next year. Denzel Boston, I've got early second round right now. I do like him. I would consider him late first at the moment. Jordyn Tyson, I've kind of got late first rounder. I just love a whole bunch of stuff I see there. But again, he might slip out depending on what we see next year. Who am I missing here? Carnell Tate. I love Tate. I think he's a first-round lock at the moment, barring something unforeseen. And then Nic Anderson is the wild card. Y'all, I love the talent and the speed there. It almost seems like he thinks he's so good he doesn't have to work on his game. So if he shows up this year having polished his game up, then I would love to see him in the first round. But, boy, it's just so sloppy and so messy, as you guys alluded to, that's a major concern. All right, real quick for our listeners, next time we're here in a couple of weeks, we have another 6-pack for you. 3 of them are for the 26 draft, and 3 of them are for the watch list for the 27 draft, including Casey Concepcion, Eric Singleton, Nick Harbor, Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith, and more. That'll be next time we're here. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Thank you, Shane and Austin, for the excellent technical work tonight. Have a great one. We'll see you next time.